I can't believe people are watching MLB tonight instead of WNBA.
Hey, really soft lines on the WNBA. It's a sport where if you just took a couple of minutes to put some time into, you could make a lot of money. Because injuries or people that are out, it takes 30 or 40 or 60 minutes for lines to move as opposed to the NBA or baseball or everything else.
Yeah, man, the elite players in WNBA are way bigger difference makers than the NBA because the difference in skill from the best to worst player is crazy.
People are like, I'm not betting on that. What the hell's going on? I'm telling you, money to be made.
Definitely.
I think half of them are still playing overseas for the openers, and the lines still haven't adjusted.
Oh yeah, that's right, man. All of them are still doing the EuroLeague stuff, probably.
Yep. See, I need to find Max with UFC. I need to find somebody on Twitter or in a chat who knows what the hell's going on. Good afternoon. Welcome in, everybody, to another Awesemo MLB Deeper Dive. We are jammed here with a 13-game slate tonight, so that means 26 pitchers. It means 26 opportunities across the board for stacks, and we've got not one but two analysts, experts, people of top insight here for you. So follow me on Twitter at Shander Show. We'll get that out of the way. But really, it's Alex Awesemo Baker in the house, Max Smotritskiy in the house. Did I get that, or am I off?
You got it.
Okay, just wanted to make sure. At DFS Max, at Awesemo DFS, of course, for Alex. Gentlemen, it's a pleasure. I know we have a lot to get into, but let's just look overall. And Alex, you can start, Max, as well. Just kind of how you're approaching tonight. Start of the weekend, busy action, some high-priced arms out there to look at as well.
Man, this looks like an awesome slate. I mean, we got some great pitching options with Joe Musgrove just being dominant and really cheap. And then we got three parks that have really good hitting conditions with the Rockies, Toronto playing in Tampa until the end of the month. And then we have this Arizona game where it's in the 90s. So this should be a really interesting one.
Yeah, Max, how you looking tonight, man?
Yeah, tons of expensive pitching to pay up for, but it's difficult with Coors being on the slate. So it's going to be really interesting how we jam some of this pitching in with a really underpriced stack in the Reds, just because how expensive they are.
Yeah, Coors was a big topic of yesterday's deeper dive and a big source from just pitching, maybe staying away clearly the fade options there, as well as both in Cincinnati and Colorado stack options. And as we saw, they put up 50 runs, it felt like last night. So we'll continue the show today, brought to you by No House Advantage. We'll tell you about NHA or the Awesemo Hall of Fame throughout the hour. But really, as we continue to tell you, not only throughout, but really at the beginning and ends, you don't want to miss anything as we get closer to lineups locking this evening, right from the start. If it's a strategy show earlier in the day, you want to make sure that you are liking, subscribing, you're sharing across the entire internet about what's happening here at Awesemo, and you want to hit the notification bell as well so you don't miss anything and you're not trying to scramble back to an old show. Wait, what did Max say tonight about Kluber and the Yankees? And you're not trying to mine any information, any extra work that's not readily available for you. All right, so with that said, gentlemen, let's start. We hit the overview, kind of feeling where we are tonight with a deeper slate. We'll get to Coors and we'll get to the stacks from it. But just as far as pitchers are concerned, and if it's guys right there really at the top, from Tyler Glasnow, the top price just underneath, or is Max Scherzer at 10-7 on DraftKings. So I guess just looking at, beginning, Alex, looking at the top price arms, trying to lock in your P1 tonight, who really jumps out at you the most?
I mean, the people have spoken. Joe Musgrove is by far the most popular pitcher today so far. And, I mean, he's been really good this year, 35% K rate, going up against St. Louis, a team that is just around league averages in every category. And then he's also pitching in Petco and San Diego, so that's a good pitcher's park. So I think DraftKings and FanDuel really screwed up Musgrove's price. He's 8,700 on DraftKings and AK on FanDuel. Looks like clearly the top option for me.
I hear you. I heard a yeah in there, Max, an agreement. It was one of those yes, I agree type.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like I don't understand the pricing here. I mean, I guess St. Louis has a good offense with Goldie and Arenado there, but I don't know, Musgrove at 8,700 with the way he's been pitching, facing a lineup with a million righties. It just doesn't make any sense. So yeah, he's going to be like 60% chalk, and you're going to have to find reasons to fade him, and it's going to be difficult. And I mean, I'm just going to try and play him with some stacks that I feel like are going to be under-owned, and that's probably going to be my strategy.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I guess the recent outings, we've seen his pricing on DraftKings drop significantly. It's nearly $2,000 since the Pittsburgh start. San Fran, he was at 9,100 all the way down now, 8,200 most recently. And that's, again, back up in that 85, 8,700 range, 87 on DraftKings. So I don't know if there's maybe a less obvious reason why his number would be so low. But it seems like right off the start, we're in agreement that Musgrove is P1 material.
Yeah. I mean, double-digit swinging strikes like all the way through. His pitch mix has really evolved this year, where he's throwing the fastball way less and the curveball and the cutter more. So that's why he's getting the strikeouts. And I mean, that's what really everybody does when they leave Pittsburgh, right? Like Pittsburgh can't figure out how to utilize these pitchers to the best of their ability. And once they go somewhere else, you know, people with brains look at them and figure out the pitch mix what they would be most effective with. His fastball velocity was down a little bit against San Fran and the Dodgers, but in his latest start against San Fran, back to 94. So I'm not really concerned.
Is there a number here for ownership that it gets a little bit concerning, especially because we have such a larger slate, and it's not like yesterday, for example. I mean, we're double, a little one game over double what we had yesterday. So does ownership at all become a problem, or maybe even less than that, more so a deterrent if it gets too high for Musgrove, Alex?
Honestly, like pitchers are the one position that I'm willing to really eat the chalk. And the reason why is we have Musgrove projected for about 25 fantasy points today. I mean, that's his average score that we're projecting. So like, that's a fantastic score for anyone else at this price. So I'm like, it's like a 50-50 if he gets more than 25 points. So like the odds are very good that he'll put up a score that's good enough for GPPs. I don't really see any alternatives that are close in the value. So there's some other guys that are good pitchers and good spots like Kershaw and Scherzer, but they're way more expensive. So I do feel like Musgrove's going to be tough to get away from.
Yeah, that makes sense. So let's lock him in, right? Assuming that we have our P1 locked in with Musgrove. Now, as you mentioned, both of you mentioned the other three names right there at the top, especially as far as cost is concerned. So now we look at the other option. If it's any of the three that are higher priced than Musgrove, even though we're locking them in as the next pitcher. So I guess, Max, if there's somebody of the three that you like the best, knowing from the projections that Alex mentioned and has up online here, they're all over at least. Yeah, all three of them, including Kershaw at 10,000, going to be over the 10K mark on DraftKings, and they're all similar to the projection of, you know, low 20s. So I wonder if there's one name that can separate them from the rest of the group.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's probably always Glasnow in this pitch mix, just because of the swinging strike rate and the upside that he possesses. The Mets are not like the greatest matchup in the world, but because they're playing in Tampa, really mitigates power with that park. So for me, it's going to be Glasnow, and I feel like because he's a little bit more expensive than the others, he's going to go a little bit under owned, and we have him at 26% as opposed to 35% for Kershaw and 32% for for Scherzer. So I think that would be the guy that I would pick out of the three.
Is there anything, Alex, with Scherzer maybe to counter with Glass now, especially just seeing how much of a strikeout machine he's been recently, and knowing that you're going to get, I mean, it's a pretty safe bet that you're going to hover around 9 Ks. I understand that you're paying more as far as, for second highest price, at least here on DraftKings. So I don't know if there was anything that you could look at with Scherzer and, maybe pull from that as opposed to rolling Glass now with Max.
Yeah, I think Glass now is, he's been having a fantastic year. He doesn't go quite as deep in games as Scherzer because he does walk more guys. And the matchup versus the Mets is a -1 for strikeouts tonight. So I don't think this is an elite spot for Glass now at the price, but a lot safer than Scherzer. Team total for the Mets is only 3.3. The team total for Arizona is almost 4. So that shows there's a lot more run potential in Arizona because Scherzer is pitching in the 90s heat. Fortunately, he's not Steven Strasburg, so I think he has a chance today. And the matchup's a little bit better. Arizona's lineup is one of the worst, and they strike out a good amount. So despite the heat, I'm willing to take a few shots on Max.
All right, now what about the third guy? And look, at no point was I trying to pit you two against each other. I was just curious because the argument that Max made about Glass now was sound, so I was curious about the second guy, but neither one of you mentioned Kershaw, at least as a go-to, as opposed to the other two. Is Kershaw a fade then in that case?
I thought you meant Max Scherzer, not Max DFS Max.
No, I did. No. I'm sorry. There are too many Maxes. I apologize. So let me preface. We'll go Scherzer for Max Scherzer and DFS Max for Max. No, I meant just as far as looking at these three, and Max DFS Max hits us with Glass now. So I wanted to get your thoughts on Scherzer regarding Glass now, but just Kershaw as a whole here. I mean, this is the other guys you see here watching on the stream, the third of the pitchers that you have the option to. I know Greinke's right hovering there below 10K, but the third option. So is it just a matter of Glass now, Scherzer are just better options, or is there a fade element to Kershaw tonight?
I think Kershaw is probably as good as Scherzer. The matchup is elite here versus Miami. They have a lot of strikeouts, including Sandy Alcantara on the mound. He's going to be getting a couple at-bats. This guy is like a free strikeout. I can't remember who it was the other day that was trending on Twitter for just like standing there and taking pitches, but
Taijuan Walker.
Yeah. That's pretty much what you can expect from Sandy Alcantara. So
yeah,
you throw that on to Kershaw's strikeout numbers have just been around average this year. He goes he has pretty good control though. So I think he's in a very good spot.
Max, what do you think on that? Just to kind of round out the top guys with Kershaw.
Yeah, for me, I think he's going to be the most owned. So that's the reason that I am soured on him as opposed to the other two. Just because I think the upside is the same for all three. And if he's going to be the most owned against his like pretty crappy Miami lineup, and he's the cheapest out of the three. So yeah, I think that's the reason for me in GPPs. I would rather go Glass now just because of the ownership.
All right, reminder, like, subscribe, make sure you share, hit that notification bell. You want to make sure that you also don't miss anything throughout the day with our Awesemo shows on YouTube, everything available on the Awesemo podcast network as well. So it's beyond just liking and subscribing for shows. We have a ton of DFS giveaways, contests. You don't want to miss anything, and you want to be in tune, up to date, right? You know how things move, injuries, lineups change. You never want to miss anything, especially as we bring you up to lineups throughout the day. Some things might be said, some advice, some insights. So you want to make sure that you're not only in tune with what's happening live, but also the Awesemo podcast network as well. And Awesemo Plus today, as we continue to remind you, and we will, the free tool today with the player rankings. So make sure you take advantage of that. Awesemo Plus $29.95. There's a great promo that we'll tell you about as well. Really, it's about what you can take advantage of. Gold Rush is the new promo code for Awesemo Plus Platinum, and it's going to get you 25% off. Look at that. As everything is in sport and season right now, the NBA, NHL are right around the corner with the playoffs. You know, the end of the NBA regular season, the NHL postseason already set. We got our final matchup from last night. So this is the time that you want to take full advantage of being a DFS player. Just use our promo code Gold Rush. That's it, Gold Rush. One word, all caps, 25% off Awesemo Plus Platinum. And that includes everything, full access to every single thing that we're doing here on the site, including the premium Slack channel where you can get in and high priority when it comes to questions for Alex and Max. Okay, so the top guys are pretty much out there as far as cost is concerned. The entire, it seems like, community here today is on the Joe Musgrove train. So that's fine. That's left the station. No issues there. Is there anybody else that may be high priced? I know if it's Greinke, if it may be dealing with what the Yankees are dealing with, although I don't know if Kluber is just too high priced. So if we start to look at Nick Pivetta, I can say from a former Philly here, it's amazing and astounding to see what he's doing. And maybe at 8,500, there's some good cost return to that. So where do we start looking? And Alex, we can start with you and hit Max as well. Where do we start looking just below that top tier of price for pitchers?
So I think once you get down below those top guys, there is a big drop off in talent. So you may be better off just going all the way down the list to the cheapest range. But of those guys, Sandy Alcantara, a little bit of a tough matchup versus Washington, but that guy has been having a good year so far. He's someone you could play. Drew Smiley's had a big drop off from last year, but the price has dropped too. But these aren't guys I'm realistically going to have in more than a few lineups.
Yeah, for me, it's like a huge drop off. Whereas I don't think I want to take a shot at like an 8.5K Pivetta, at Fenway against Ohtani and Trout and, these other guys. And then other than I like Smiley because of the matchup. And my other matchup that's really good for strikeouts is David Peterson against the Rays. We already talked about the Rays being in this park where mitigates home runs. And that's really all they try to do, strike out or hit home runs. And their team total is only 3.7 against David Peterson, who has a 28% strikeout rate. His other stats are not that impressive, but the strikeout rate is really nice and only 7.4K.
All right, so staying away in that case, as you mentioned, Peterson, you start to look at some prices. If it's high 7,000s on DK, is he a guy then, if you start to get into the fade/red line territory of just staying away from guys?
Yeah, for sure. I think it also makes sense to pair him with a 10K guy and fade Musgrove. Because in this matchup, with how much the Rays strike out, I think he has as much upside as the 8K and the 10K guys. He just has to mitigate the hard contact, which the park will help him with. So, yeah, I'm really high on Peterson here today. And, Smiley's strikeout rate is still pretty good. And this lineup that he's facing with Milwaukee, I've been talking about them all year, where without Yelich, they have one good hitter, and that's Avi Garcia, really. Lorenzo Cain is whatever, but he's not going to give you home runs. Avi Garcia is having a really good year. So as long as he avoids him, I think Smiley could have a really nice day as well.
You guys mentioned Pivetta, and just as far as, at home and knowing that the run support should be there, coming back off the COVID list and having a great season. I mean, my goodness, if I could get half of this when he was a Philly, I probably would have a little more sanity in my head right now. But looking at where he is, the matchup, also expecting some run support at 8,500, is that a name that you can be talked into, or maybe do you guys like where Pivetta sits as far as a second option on the mound?
Well, I think Pivetta is a guy that I'm comfortable with if he has a good matchup, because he does strike out a decent amount at 23% of batters faced. So The matchup versus the Angels, though, I don't think we can call that a good matchup. They strike out less than average and have two of the best players in baseball. So, topping it off, that is in Fenway, a hitter's park. I think we could do a lot better.
Fair enough. I imagine with that same vein, it's probably staying as far away from Griffin Canning as possible, knowing that matchup and that line. I mean, we'll get a little deeper into stacks, but just as far as what he may have to go up against, that would probably, it's 7,100. I know it's not cheap to take him in your lineup, but I would guess that Canning would be more of a fade play.
I actually really like him today.
Do you? Okay. No, that's why I'm here, to make a fool of myself, and you're here to correct me.
No. I mean, obviously, like, the Red Sox have a great lineup. Fenway's a great hitter's park. I mean, they have a 5-team total. But his underlying stats this year are pretty insane. Like 26% strikeout rate. He's giving up only 31% hard hits. His xWOBA is 292. That's in line with really elite guys. And you're getting him at 5,900 on DK. That's insane value. I actually really like him today. And I don't expect him to garner that much ownership at all.
I should have known, the Yankees fan. Taking any shot, any opportunity with I should have asked. See, I should have led with Alex. No, but fair enough. I mean, it's a good point. And I think on the surface, you might miss a lot of that if you're not looking at some of the deeper numbers and analytics too, Griffin, just because of the matchup and where it is and where it's being played. People may stay away from that, but you're right with the price, then, and that works out, you're going to look like a genius after that.
Yeah, I mean, let's hope. Like, I don't know. Like, his last start was a little rough, but it was against the Dodgers. Only a 6% swinging strike rate, but the Dodgers don't really strike out much. The underlying stuff was still fine. 94 on the fastball, throwing his curveball and his changeup a bunch. The matchup, of course, is super scary, but that's why he's 5.9K. Like, that's the reason you're getting him at that cheap a price. So I think he makes sense to take a shot at today.
All right. I'm curious because it's going to come up a lot on the opposite end when we start focusing more from stack first as opposed to stack being the matchup. But Wade Miley of the two, I imagine, would be the one that you would take a risk on. And I don't know, based off of how deep it gets with what he's been able to do, coming off a pretty damn good start as well. But is there any thought at all in playing, and I imagine him over Marquez by a mile, but is there any thought at all at playing Miley tonight at a cheaper cost, 6,500 on FanDuel? Is there any thought at all, knowing that it's the belly of the beast when it comes to offense?
No, I'm not thinking Miley is a good option. The main reason he's in Coors. So the problem is Miley has been having some good starts, especially like that no-hitter, obviously. But he's a guy that doesn't pitch hard. He pitches with a lot of spin. That doesn't work nearly as well in Coors. So I really don't think that he's an option tonight.
And I saw on the stream, Solid Picks was asking if you were off the Reds, Alex, last night because of the high ownership.
Yeah, I mean, I had a little bit, but they were like 30 to 40% owned with their best batters. And in baseball, like I feel like you can fade anyone at that price. I kind of liked the Oakland and Boston game, and I had a lot of those guys. Boston kind of produced, and then Colorado last night had a really good night, so that obviously was a winner.
All right, and I'm just curious if maybe it is because I got it wrong with Canning, so I'm not going to assume anything now, Max. Is there a guy in Coors tonight that has any fade value or contrarian value worth taking at least one flyer and one lineup in?
Yeah, not for me as far as pitching goes, just because they're not going to be that owned today. The hitters aren't going to be like 30% chalk like we had yesterday. So yeah, when the course is under owned and like not 30 degrees with snow, yeah, I just like taking the stacks here and forgetting that the pitchers exist.
Just looking at that bottom, as far as anybody, mining some talent here, that if it's matchup or if it's just what a guy's been doing recently, I'll just give you, if it's Vinny Velasquez, and I'm seeing it 6,800 here on DraftKings and kind of counter the last couple of starts looking good from what we're used to, and knowing that for, at least in his case, it could be one inning, it could be the third inning, it could be this fifth inning or the seventh inning, and that's it, where he gives everything up. But we looked at the top end, the top tier guys, especially according to Price and Musgrove, as a heavy option below the 10K. But on the back end of it, really on the bottom end of it, is there anybody, if we're spending a lot more elsewhere, that jumps out? And Alex, we can start here with you, just kind of at that bottom of cheap options when it comes to pitchers.
Yeah, I got two names here. The first is Tariq Skubal. He is coming off an 8 strikeout start.
Your guy, of course, in Detroit.
Yeah, the thing is, I don't think I'm going to take him today. I'm going to wait until maybe we see some more evidence that he's gotten the strikeouts back, because the rest of his starts have been pretty crummy. So the guy I'm looking at is Dean Kramer in a tough matchup versus the Yankees, but they do strike out a decent amount, and Kramer has about a 22% strikeout rate. So I feel like the potential for strikeouts is decent versus the Yankees, and I'm willing to gamble that he gets lucky getting some outs. So that would just be because he's super low owned, and I feel like if he has an outlier day, I could win the GPP for sure.
Max, throw the same thing at you, just kind of mining the bottom as far as either low owned or low value, even on the cost.
Yeah, for me, Kramer is tough just because such a good hitter's park in Camden, and the Yankees don't really strike out as much as people expect them to. They're making a lot more contact, taking the walks, and Kramer just throws way too many pitches down the middle of the plate. And the reason I know this is because I've rostered him like 3 times this year in different matchups. So he will get like an 0-2 count and then just inexplicably throw a fastball down the middle and get hit hard. So yeah, I think I would rather take a shot on Canning, like I said, or some of these 7K guys like Peterson. Yeah, I mean, just looking down here, just not a lot of guys. Maybe a Johan Oviedo, who does have some decent strikeout stuff against the Padres, and their run total is only 3.8, and he's 7.2K. He's not really like insane bottom of the barrel, but that's another guy I would take a look at over these other options.
So just to be clear here, none of us, me in Philadelphia with the Phillies, the Yankees, or the Tigers, none of us are going with any of the guys throwing for our team tonight, right? Is that accurate? Not even in like a back end, like Hail Mary type scenario, boom bust scenario, right?
No, not really.
Okay, fair enough. Now, let me throw one name finally here, and then we'll switch, of course, to the stacks and start looking at some matchups comparing. And I know Coors Field is going to jump right out there, but just the matchup, Atlanta on the road, not really what they've been at home, and Hauser going up against this Braves team. It's a low total. I see it 7.5. I wonder if there's any value here with Hauser, low 8,000. I say 8,200 on DraftKings. We talked about Smiley, who he's going up against, but just with Hauser and the matchup with the Braves on the road in Milwaukee, is there anything at all there with Hauser, guys?
I don't think it's crazy. I mean, he's got a 21% strikeout rate this year, which is not the most exciting, but I feel like you can do a lot better at the price he's at. Atlanta, they have a good lineup that has a lot of pop. They do strike out about average, but there's nothing about this matchup that's making me want to go to Hauser. Fair
enough. I imagine it's going to be similar sentiment then, Max.
Yeah, I mean, Hauser, I think he's hurt. Like, his swinging strike rate is way down from last year. His last start, he inexplicably got like a 17% swinging strike rate, where it was 2% and 4% the 2 starts before. But his fastball velocity is about 2 miles lower than we saw it last year. Like, topped out of 95 last year. It's 93 this year. I don't think he has the stuff to battle this really good Atlanta lineup. Like, I would be more interested in Atlanta stack. Gave up 70% hard hits against the Marlins last start. That's not the stats I want to see. Definitely not what I was expecting from him this year so far.
That's amazing. Just, trying to find anything deeper, but that's fine. We won't force it. We won't push it by any means. Just start looking at the stacks here and, flip it to offense and trying to find right there at the top. I'm sure we can begin Cincinnati as they were yesterday, right there at the top for Alex's top stack tools. And the percentage is going to be there. The value, of course, though, not quite there. So I wonder, just looking at Cincinnati, and we can look at the matchup in Coors Field across the board here, but just looking at stacking the Reds tonight, the stack percentage would tell you to go there, but I wonder if the value is there, Alex.
Yeah, I mean, Cincinnati's not nearly as good a spot today because they're facing Herman Marquez instead of Chichi Gonzalez. Marquez has a long track record of being pretty good, like even at Coors Field. His performance this year has been average, I'd say. So the temperature in Coors today is going to be in the low 60s. So it's not like full on summer Coors, but pretty good conditions. But the matchup is a little bit worse than yesterday.
You staying away from Cincinnati, Max, or is there a way that you're working their stack in?
I actually think that they're in a good spot just because they're going to be low owned because of the prices and Marquez. Marquez has not impressed me this year so far. Only 22% strikeout rate, 13% walk rate. That really jumps out at me at Coors because if you put a couple guys on and give up a hard hit, that's going to go over the fence and you're going to give up a bunch of runs in a hurry. I think his name recognition is better than who he is as a pitcher. Like the underlying stats actually tell me Wade Miley has been better so far this year than Marquez, which you wouldn't really think about. He doesn't give up a ton of hard hits, but the three guys in this Cincinnati Reds lineup that are just insanely good hitters, Naquin, Winker, and Castellanos, are all having insane years. And I really think they could pose some problems to Marquez today.
Yeah, that just looking at the drop in it, right? We had a total upwards to 11.5 before the gate closed, and it's dropped a full run. And clearly, everybody on the stream to Alex Gundacker, all of us yesterday it was the Chi-Chi at the expense of Chi-Chi show. I think he got more ripped than anybody else. So clearly things changed. Now, as far as the flip side is concerned, I tried to bait both of you into taking Wade Miley earlier, and you both said no. I mean, come on, I'm the new one here, so I got caught. But as far as running the Rockies in a stack, we saw that last night. They were the first to get on the board and clearly had no problem getting runs, manufacturing runs at home. Clearly a different team than we've seen, and I don't think the books have actually caught up to Colorado at home yet. With that said, is this what's going to be a cheap stack, a playable stack?
Well, I think.
Sorry, Alex.
Go ahead.
That's my fault. I should have meant. You think that I'd be able to do that?
No worries. Yeah, I think last night they had an interesting lineup where Connor Joe was batting second and he was 2K, so that made it just like really cheap to stack the Rockies. So we'll have to see what their lineup looks like today. It does look like the really cheap guys are going to pull a lot of the ownership, and that provides an opportunity to get a little different by just getting the better players that are expensive. So I think that could be a decent strategy, even though on our stack tool, it says their ownership is fairly high.
All right, Max, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So for me, I'm not on Miley because the Rockies don't really strike out much, and because of obviously playing in Coors. And he's still priced up from his insane no-hitter. So 7K, no. But I think I'm staying away from the Rockies as well. Their best hitters are Blackman and McMahon, who are both going to be in a negative platoon split against Miley. So that's a reason for me to just fade the whole stack, just because the rest of their hitters are not that good. Other than Trevor Story, who's $1 billion. I think for me, the Rockies are going to be a stay away, even at their cheap prices.
So how much of this, and I'm just looking at it again, just from a total standpoint, because there's always going to be expected offense. And I get it. Once you get through the starters, the variables of the bullpen will definitely impact a specific total. But what I'm getting from you guys both overall is that despite it, or in spite of it being at Coors and having guys, if it's Miley as well as Marquez on the mound, there isn't that much expectation of a lot of offense, or at least enough to even get to that total where you would see it then pay out from a DFS lineup standpoint. Is that kind of an accurate read of Coors tonight for you guys, Alex and then Max?
Well, I think the potential for offense here is the highest, kind of tied for first. So I don't want to undersell it. I think it's a good spot to target, especially it looks like the ownership isn't particularly high today. So maybe going to some Cincinnati and Colorado stacks makes sense. But I'm not going to make that like a key cornerstone of my strategy today because there are a lot of different good stacks you can play around with.
Yeah, like Alex mentioned, the difference for me is that we have the Blue Jays playing in a Little League park.
Yep.
So that kind of makes it, makes Coors less owned for sure, but also not as much of a priority just because, you know, the two pitchers going in Toronto or in Tampa are not very good. So there's the totals between Coors and Tampa are pretty similar. I mean, obviously there's still going to be runs scored at Coors. Like, I don't want to undersell it, like Alex said, but for me, like, I think the Reds make much more of a priority for me than the Rockies, just because of their low ownership. You know, I'm going against Marquez, which is a perceived bad matchup.
You mentioned the Little League Park that we see, and those two teams in both the Jays and the Phillies are going to be super high up on Alex's stack tool. The show today brought to you by No House Advantage. And as somebody who just cannot wait for this thing to be live in PA because it's the perfect alternative to prop bets with the books. NHA, No House Advantage, has now created the innovative way to play player props across the board. Doesn't matter if it's NBA, MLB, NFL, golf. I know, Max, you're heavy on the DFS, golf, as well as betting. This is the place to do it, all for cash prizes. It's all peer-to-peer. It's exclusive. It levels the playing field, and value is locked in right from the beginning of the day. You don't have to worry about everybody else jumping on a play or a tip that you have, and then the books adjusting for what is most likely going to be a heavy payout. In this case, it's locked in no matter what. And that not only limits the shift, but it also equals the playing field. So it's awesome here. Over 500 player prop offerings alone at No House Advantage. You'll receive $20 first match. Just use our promo code Awesemo. And I can't tell you guys, as soon as this is live in PA, I'm all over it because I'm sick and tired of losing all the value on the player props. And I do a lot, right? I feel like that's an easier way than having the games up there that you're betting on. So seeing this work and seeing this be the new way to bet player props, I'm sitting here waiting, man. Just come on to PA. Come on to PA. We're behind. You know, Jersey is the place where everything you could bet on the Oscars and all the other stuff. But especially, as I mentioned, with golf, I know, Max, you're heavy in that. We talk a lot about individual plays here, DFS, if it's stacking in baseball, if it's just playing in the NBA, NFL stacks as well. So this is the spot to beat. And again, use our promo code Awesemo, AWESEMO, on No House Advantage. All right, so let's look at this minor league park tonight and the value. I mean, if you were just looking at value for stacks on Alex's stack tool, his Tigers are right there, number 2, but the Phils at 13.5 of a return on that value. And they're not that, well, clearly the ownership is heavy as well. So let's start with the Phillies. No JT Realmuto. Didi Gregorius is expected. I do believe that he'll play tonight if that's not already locked in. So let's just look at this lineup. Then we'll switch to Toronto. As Max, you mentioned, neither one of these pitchers really jumps out as dominant. I'm not willing. Look, I'm in Philly, and I'm telling you, don't trust Velasquez. So from that standpoint, let's start with the Phillies as far as a viable stack, Max.
Yeah, I mean, Mats just gives up so much power. I mean, both of these guys do, really. The X slugging that Mats gives up is 433, which is really, really high. And being in a Little League park in 76-degree weather which was what we're projecting at start time here. Yeah, it just seems like a really bad spot for the pitcher and a great spot for all these hitters. It's really sad that Real Muto is not going to be in the lineup because he's actually having a really awesome year so far, really putting it all together. But I really love Bryce Harper in this spot. He actually hits lefties better than you would think. And his numbers this year are like, I don't know, video game numbers. His X slugging is 703. His X WOBA is 470. He's hitting everything at like his exit velocity is 91.9, 46% hard hits. The guy's just put on in another gear. Like we haven't seen him like this since he left Washington, really. So yeah, I mean, up and down this lineup, I think you can take anybody. Like Alec Baum is obviously always a power threat. Hoskins is awesome. Harper, McCutchen is even hitting for more power this year, even though his hard hits don't really indicate it. But he changed his launch angle and made it a little bit better for home runs, which is awesome to see. Yeah, I love the Phillies here.
It's amazing. You know, normally we see this with Harper where it's like the first month or maybe 6 weeks where everybody else is slow and sluggish on the team and he's putting up MVP numbers. And by the time you even get to this point, you can start to see it come down a little bit. And while the rest of the offense is starting to pick up, Harper is not slowing down at all. You mentioned righties, lefties, the split 312 versus righties, 290 versus lefties. And that might be like an anchor like that in this lineup tonight, Alex, against that matchup, that pitcher. It might be enough to justify the stack.
Yeah, I mean, Philadelphia is looking great tonight. They have a great park. Steven Matt's not a bad pitcher, but not someone that we're afraid of. So the real thing we're worried about here is the ownership. It does look like Philadelphia is about twice as owned as their chance of being a top stack tonight, which that is a big red flag. So in general, I don't think that you need to avoid Philly, but they might not be the top way to make money tonight. But a lot of this is driven by certain players that are just really high owned. One fade could be Alex Baum. He has been having a really slow year, but someone that people are excited about in his rookie kind of unofficial, or I guess it's officially his rookie season, but I think he played last season. It's always really confusing this year, but he's looking like the highest owned player on Draftkings from the Phillies. So definitely, I think you want to pay up for Harper, even though it's lefty. Segura looks a little bit low owned. So those would be two guys that I wouldn't want to leave off my roster here.
Yeah, Segura is another guy. And if you're just looking at it right, as far as the individuals as Alex laid out, Max, I would imagine that he would be a guy, especially if you can justify it with price, where in the lineup, he's going to have opportunities. You mentioned Kutch and what he's been able to do, just having him kind of in front of him, Segura kind of back in that natural spot, top 2 lineup spot. He's going to hit the ball hard if an opportunity. I see him at 3,300 on 3,000 on Fanduel. Pretty cheap overall for a guy that's sandwiched right there in a pretty good lineup.
Yeah, I mean, he's never going to give you the home runs that you want.
Right.
Like, that's the reason why I wouldn't play him as a one-off, really, ever. But in a stack, he makes sense just because if the order gets batted around enough, I mean, he'll get there. Yeah, I mean, Alec Baum at 2.9K, I don't know why DraftKings hates him. Like, I get that he strikes out a bunch, but he has a 51% hard hit this year. He's hitting the ball on the ground a bunch. Really has to adjust his launch angle to get the ball in the air. But once that happens, I'm expecting a ton of home runs.
All right, so what am I missing on the flip side? I see that the Jays have a projected run total here on our Awesemo lineup builder, over 6 at 6.1. We mentioned the matchup problems for the Jays, but Vince Velasquez on the mound here. You've got that middle, Bichette, Guerrero. I mean, I could easily see Velasquez victimized early and often tonight. Now we switch it and look more at Toronto as an opportunity to stack, Alex. I would think that they would be maybe even a better option for a stack than the Phillies.
I mean, Vegas definitely is agreeing with you. They're giving Toronto about 6 runs tonight, which is very high. And Velasquez, I don't mind picking him in DFS because he has a lot of strikeouts, but he walks a ton of guys, 6 per 9 innings. And that makes him not a very good pitcher. So I think that could especially come back to bite him when the hitting conditions are really good. So I think this is a good spot for a really talented Toronto team. Really have no reservations about going to them.
Any issue with the ownership, Max? It looks like Toronto, at least here on our stacks tool, is even more owned than the Phillies tonight, and understandably so with that matchup.
Yeah, I actually think they're going to end up being low. If you play the expensive guys, they're going to end up being lower owned than you think, just because everybody's going to try and pay up for these 4 pitchers that are really expensive as well. I like Toronto. Their leverage score is better than Philly. Still a negative leverage score, which you never like that much, but hopefully a little bit more ownership goes to Coors and we end up getting Toronto a little bit cheaper. Yeah, I mean, their numbers are great across the board. Vladdy having an awesome year. And like we mentioned with Velasquez, he definitely has flashes where he can look unhittable. And then he walks like the base is loaded.
Yeah.
So just definitely a better DFS pitcher than a real life pitcher, but also can get crushed here just because of the amount of walks he gives up.
Yeah, it's amazing how reality defined in 2 different worlds can be completely different. And Vince Velasquez, especially somebody who's forced more often than not to watch him here in Philly, I can definitely assure you of that. All right, so let's look at a couple of other stacks, some that may be obvious, maybe some that are a little deeper that we're going to have to mine some value here. And again, reminding you of this great offer for all of you new Awesemo Plus users out there. We have this great opportunity for you to jump in. Awesemo Plus Platinum, you can get 25% off. And look, all you need to do is use our promo code Gold Rush. That's it, Gold Rush. One word. It's all caps. It's easy. And you're going to get 25% off Awesemo Plus Platinum. Platinum is everything. You go from Awesemo Plus to now Platinum. You get all of the premium content and tools available on the website. Everything from the projections, player to ownership to premium Slack channel content. You get to chat with us on the premium Slack. That's where you get bumped right to the top of the line there. So it's only valid for the next 6 days through 5/20. Okay, that's May 20th. It's May 14th now. So there's no excuse if you're a new Awesemo Plus user to not jump on this. And if you're not an Awesemo Plus user, then now you understand what you're missing. Exclusive, great, cool opportunities. So we want you to be Awesemo Plus at $29.95. And then from there, you get more. A lot of places, what happens is once they get you in, that's it. Here, we keep giving back to those who are deeper and deeper inside the Awesemo community. And speaking of which, we have to let everybody know about this too, because as a newer member, I love watching this. Every time you're going out there, whatever you're playing, whatever sport that you're setting a DFS lineup for, at the end of the day, when the next day, when you're looking at where you are, if you're not right there at the top, then you're seeing who is. And look, it's all Awesemo profile picks. So download the Awesemo profile pick at awesemo.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Awesemo HOF, and you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. So a couple of ways in here to get Awesemo Plus Platinum content, and that's one of them. So if you're listening to Alex, if you're listening to Max, and you're already a member of the Awesemo community, the Awesemo Plus community, this is a no-brainer. You're already winning. You're already at the top right there. Now you might as well put your money to work. Tweet your wins at us at Awesemo HOF, and then you win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. It's amazing, from just the deals to that. And I keep telling everybody, Alex has probably heard me say this a couple of times, but it's true, Max, where the first thing I do after, really the second, after the sobering reminder of me not winning that tournament is go right to the top. And now I'm not even looking for how much people won. I'm looking for how many Awesemo profile picks you'll see there at the top. So definitely a cool thing to see throughout. And we encourage everybody to be part of the Awesemo Hall of Fame. So let's look now, and it can be more on the element of, a projected run. Maybe it's a matchup with the Nationals and D-backs where you have a pretty high projected run total for Washington going up against Riley Smith with the D-backs. So as we kind of look back in the final couple of minutes here and looking a little deeper at stacks, Max, we can start here with you and just get your thoughts on Washington. If it's a playable stack, especially with the matchup, knowing that you may have to pay if it's Soto or Turner in that lineup.
Yeah, the ownership is just so high, like 12.5, and they're not really a good offense. They have good pieces for sure. Like Schwarber has all the power in the world. Soto is an amazing hitter. And Turner is really good, with the stolen base upside that he brings. But then you put in like Josh Harrison in the second spot and Starlin Castro in the 5 spot. And it just really brings down the value of the stack for me. Plus, they're not sneaking up on anybody. If the roof looks like it's going to be open, 96 degrees, Riley Smith should not be pitching in the majors. So combine all of these factors, and they're going to be 15% owned, according to our top stacks tool. They're projected as the 4th best stack at 7.8% of being the top stack today, which is a nice score, but just that and coupled with their prices, I think they're not going to sneak up on anybody, and you're going to see a lot of that Washington chalk along with Musgrove.
Yeah, Alex, I wonder how much of, and I don't know day to day how much of it becomes reactionary, but when you have a pretty convincing win over the Phillies yesterday, especially when you've seen this team, as Max said, struggle more often than not to score, how much of that do you think is just reactionary from what people saw that 5-1 win yesterday?
Honestly, like I don't see people chasing baseball as much as they do in other sports, where like the Rockies, for instance, like had a huge day yesterday.
Yep.
I don't feel like that usually translates into larger ownership the following day. But I think the conditions are really strong here. It's going to be in the 90s, so Washington is going to be in a great hitting spot. Going to be really popular. So if you want to stack up Washington, you're going to have to get a little bit creative with the rest of your lineup, but overall, not a bad option.
How about Boston? And knowing it, we talked about the pitching matchup here, Pivetta and Canning, and even that deeper look at Canning and the analytics that you laid out there, Max. And I just wonder from a stack standpoint in Boston, that lineup, you're going to pay a little bit, but as far as just balancing what you can get back with the ownership, your thoughts as far as just stacking Boston tonight?
Yeah, why is Michael Chavis leading off? I thought he was like a 50% strikeout guy. Doesn't seem like the greatest leadoff option. Not sure what the Red Sox are doing there. I mean, they've been leading off Marwin Gonzalez, which is also not the best option. But yeah, I mean, I think if I was playing them, I would go to one-offs more, just because I'm not expecting Griffin Canning to get lit up. And like Verdugo looks really cheap. Canning does have some splits versus lefties. I mean, I would say Rafael Devers, but he's 6K, which is where he should be. Yeah, I mean, never a bad option to stack in Fenway, just because you can get a million hits in a row right off that monster. But not somewhere I'm looking today. More as a one-off for me.
Yeah, Alex, you have them kind of in the middle here for our top stacks tools that you have on the site on awesemo.com. And I wonder if there was anything that may nudge you towards playing them, or if it's kind of you are where you are in the rankings when it comes to the Red Sox tonight.
Yeah, I mean, we have the Red Sox as about a 5% chance to be the top stack on 26 game slate. That is a good amount above average. So I think, I mean, the way I usually approach it is I want to have the top scoring stack as long as they, like it's somewhat within reason. So I'm seeing the pricing on the heart of the order for Boston's is very high, but I feel like you can make up for that by going to some value pitchers, and there's some decent options. Unfortunately, one of our favorites, Canning, is the one on the other side of this. So it does make it a little bit harder, but I think you can make some really strong lineups with the Boston stack.
All right, so it kind of in that similar range of that 5% range, and looking at the percentage of being that top stack. Right below Colorado is where you get into the 4 teams: Houston, the Cubs, the Angels, and the Red Sox. And kind of looking at the top there, I'm just curious if Houston does jump out at you. You know, there's value there. It's going to be a lower owned stack. At least that's what we have as far as the predictive model is concerned. So where is Houston on your radar tonight, looking at a possible stack, that isn't as high owned, that could sneak in there, and even if it's a 5.9% chance, be that top stack? Max. Sorry.
Yeah,
Alex.
yeah.
Alex Awesemo. Sorry.
Yeah, for me, it's like they're just so expensive. Like there is nowhere that you can nobody that you can play here that isn't 5K. Kyle Tucker is a great player, and I love him. But going against a lefty, I don't know how much I want of him. I guess I would definitely include him if I was stacking this, just because he's 3.3K. But taking up an outfield spot isn't that awesome. Yeah, it's just they're really expensive, and they're not projected as highly as some of these other teams. But yeah, I definitely don't hate it. Like Alex said, if you want to win a GPP, you're going to need the top scoring stack of the day. And at 5%, like they definitely have a better than average chance of getting there. Yeah, just not a priority for me, just because of the pricing and the fact that you have to play guys like Altuve and Brantley that don't really have home run upside for me.
Is there anything similar to that, kind of with what Max said in the backdrop of Houston? Anything similar to that same vein with Chicago? A little less owned, Alex, as far as the stack is concerned, but you're pretty much looking in the same range as far as the percent that they do hit for that top stack.
Yeah, I mean, Chicago's going up against the Detroit Tigers today, so they're probably toast, right? But they priced
brought them back for you.
They priced the Cubs on DraftKings up to oblivion. Like, these guys are more expensive than Mike Trout. So you're paying an arm and a leg for a game where the conditions are just average. It's Scooble, talented rookie, but probably a better than average matchup on that respect. But that all doesn't add up to like being worthy of being the highest priced team on the slate. So when it gets that out of proportion, the price and the value, then maybe I look elsewhere.
As far as the Braves are concerned, it's a lower projection. We talked about the matchup, especially with Smiley going for Atlanta, but more so when I threw Hauser out there as a possible option. It looks like the stack is going to be priced high, and the return, at least the expectation of the return, may not be worth it. I wonder, is Atlanta going to be a hard fade for you, Max? Are you going to find a way maybe to work, or is there a one-off or two that you can justify paying a price for?
Man, if we didn't have that last game for Hauser, I would be like 100% on the Braves here. Just because I think the name value of Hauser and what he did last year isn't congruous to what he is this year. So a 3.6 run total for Atlanta feels super low for me. They're a hard stack to get to with, like you said, you mentioned the pricing here. But I really like going to some of the guys in the bottom of the order here. Austin Riley and Swanson have a ton of power. They're both in the 3Ks, and you can pair them with like a Freeman and Acuna to give you like, a 4K average stack where I think they're going to go pretty much unowned, and they could give you a winning score today. So yeah, actually, I'm gonna choose to ignore that last start for Hauser and pretend like he still isn't where he was last year and play some Braves today.
Is there, just as we're kind of winding down, and I will say this, not that I feel vindicated by any means of it, but I'm not the only one. Sammy B on the stream noticed, and he even gives you props for it, Max, that you, DFS Max, a real Yankees fan, love the dislike for Boston. So it was a little bit of the overtones that I sense, which I love, by the way, because, hey, I'm here in Philly, so I don't have any allegiance to Boston, but I just making sure it wasn't just me that was driving it.
I actually almost moved to Boston a couple of years ago, so that would have been really brutal for me.
And you would have worn that hat all day, wouldn't you?
I convinced my wife not to take that job. Yeah, I mean, I wore this hat when I went to Boston last year, and I got so much crap for it in Boston restaurants. I was with my kid who was like 2 years old at the time. And even with a 2-year-old kid right next to me, they chose to call me names. So Boston people live up to the hype right there.
Yeah, I can't say anything because as soon as I start saying people on the stream, you two, what are you talking? You're in Philadelphia. What are you talking about?
You did throw snowballs at Santa, so there you go.
Oh, come on. The guy was drunk. All right. He was a fill-in. All right. All right. Before we get out of here, is there anything super low? And I'm just curious because I always look like the Hail Mary and kind of mine it for both of you now in the case of the low percentage stack. I mean, there's just no way in hell that Seattle or the St. Louis Cardinals or Arizona is going to be the top stack. But you know what? If you were going to take that long shot Hail Mary boom flyer on a stack, Alex, we can start with you. Max, we can round out with you. But who is that team, that stack at the bottom of the bunch that you're not totally fading and that you would take a strong look at?
I'd say the one that stands out to me, and this is a variable that we don't really account for on the top stacks, I have to admit, but Arizona is facing Scherzer, and the conditions are really good for bats in this game with the 90s temperature. Arizona is not a very good team, but that's going to make them look good if they can get Scherzer out of the game. So you're banking on a little bit of early luck to make Scherzer start short. But I do feel like we might be underrating their chances tonight.
Yeah, for me, it's the Orioles going against my Yankees.
Oh,
Just because Corey Kluber can hang some pitches, like I don't think that he's this amazing pitcher all of a sudden. His fastball is still like 89, 90. He has to work off those breaking balls. And Camden has a ton of allows a ton of power. And the Orioles, have like Mancini, Mountcastle. And like these cheap guys like DJ Stewart and Austin Hayes that definitely hit for power. And the Yankees middle of the bullpen, like take it from a Yankee fan, not good. So if they get Kluber out of there, I think they can put up a bunch of runs.
make sure you follow everybody here. You want to follow Alex Awesemo Baker at Awesemo DFS. Max is at DFS Max. I'm at Shander Show. Thanks, guys. We got a lot in here. It's a busy night, busy slate. So nobody can say now after this hour that they're unprepared by any means. Thanks to Chris for producing the show. And thank you all out there for watching, for interacting, and good luck.